Good morning, everybody. I do apologise for my voice being a little croaky this morning. I would like to start by making sure that everybody can actually hear me clearly. So if you can hear me, would you please raise your hand? Great, that's a good response. So that's fantastic. Thank you very much all for everything that you're doing in terms of getting your studies underway. It's wonderful to see so many of you turned up today, and it's great that we'll be able to help you to get kick-started. So let me begin by explaining that this orientation session is being recorded so that it's available for viewing later on. My name is Holly Thorne. I'll talk a little bit about myself in the very near future, but welcome to this accredited learning orientation. We are very excited to have a collection of students here from multiple states and from multiple qualifications, so thank you very much for coming. We're excited to help you as best we can. Most of you will be already aware of who your assessor is, the person that will be giving you support. So if you haven't heard from them already, or you're not entirely sure who they are, by all means, please let me know and I'll be able to put you in touch with them. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. For all of you who just let me know that the sound just went out, thank you. I hope that I've corrected it. If there are any of you who can't hear me, by all means, let me know in the chat box, but thank you for letting me know that the sound just dropped out. Okay, so what I am hoping to do today is let you know exactly all of the information that you need in order to participate effectively in this qualification. So we'll begin by making some acknowledgement and welcome. Now, the office where Network of Community Activities is located lies on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we wish to acknowledge the elders of that nation as custodians of the land where we learn and work. So we pay our respects to elders past, present, future. So moving along, we thought we would begin by letting you all know who your key contacts at Network are. This will be pretty important for you in order to be able to get various things accomplished. So by way of introduction, my name is Holly. I'm the Learning and Assessment Manager here at Network, and it's my job to make sure that the VET practice is appropriate here. So I'm the one who makes sure that your courses actually meet the requirements that are set down by the various training packages. Predominantly we work from the Community Services training package, and that's where the Diploma of School Age Education and Care and the Cert 4 of School Age Education and Care sit. I am in the office generally on a Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, but if for some reason I'm working off site, whether it's because I've had to do visits myself or because I'm working off site for another reason, I am generally contactable during those days by contacting the office, and then I will return your call no later than 24 hours generally, unless I'm unwell, in which case I'll return at my first day back in the office. I am responsible for helping new students get oriented, get ready to study. I'm responsible for assigning you with your local assessors. I'm also responsible for dealing with any inquiries that your supervisors may have. It's about now that it would be a good idea to let you know also that if you are hoping to have your supervisor liaise with Network, we actually have to receive permission to do that in writing, because we're unable to share any of your particulars on the basis that there's a Privacy Act that we must also adhere to as a registered training organisation. That's one of the standards we must uphold, and so please let us know if you wish to have permission to disclose, and forms for that can be downloaded from our website under the Policies and Procedures tab. Now, In addition to that, I handle any escalation. So if there's a difficulty that you have with your assessor that you wish to ask about, you're quite welcome to come to me. And it's my job to make sure that they're supporting you as best as they can. So again, try immediately for your assessor. If there's a difficulty that arises, try immediately to talk with them. But if you don't feel you're getting any joy there, I'm happy to talk to you about it. And we'll go through that as a more specific process a little bit later in the presentation. Now, the next person that's very important to you is Uma. She's our training administrator. She is in from Monday to Friday, so she's a full-time employee, and she is there to help you with administration matters. So if you need your password reset, if you wish to update details, if you wish to find out who your assessor is because something's gone awry or you've moved and want to know whether your assessor is likely to be different, or any of those sorts of things, you would contact Uma, and she is able to help you. Now, our telephone number, as you can see on the screen, is 02 9212 3244. And you're welcome to contact us anytime that you like. Please be advised though that if you contact me on a Monday or a Friday, I may not be able to get back to you until I'm either in the office next or work. Certainly won't be able to contact you over the weekend. So we're there for you. Uma, however, is there in my absence, so she will be able to help you as best she can to get anything done if you need something done quite urgently. Now, there are two email addresses that you need to be aware of. The first one is the General Learning Inquiries email address, and that is learning@networkofcommunityactivities.org.au. You can email that if you have any inquiries, if you wish to get in touch with your assessor, and all of the emails that come out to you from your Job Ready portal, which we'll talk about again in a little bit of time, they will come out from the learning@networkofcommunityactivities.org.au email. So that is for general learning inquiries. However, and this email address is managed by Uma. However, if you have specific questions about assessment, you can email assessment@networkofcommunityactivities.org.au, and I manage that email box. So if you have a specific question about assessment, then that is the box to address it to. Having said that, if you wish to contact your assessors, you must email them at learning@networkofcommunityactivities.org.au for the moment. Very soon we will be able to provide you with specific email addresses for the trainer, so it'll be easier to contact them. However, if you're trying to get in touch with your assessor, please contact learning@networkofcommunityactivities.org.au, and Uma will make sure that that is forwarded to the appropriate assessor. Okay, now any questions at this point? If you have any questions, please by all means type them into the chat box. I'll give it just a minute before we move on. Okay, should any of them come up, I will answer them as they do, but we'll move on from now. Okay, so Networks Accredited Training. We are a registered training organisation, and our RTO ID is 90537. I have just been asked if this is the same presentation that's been provided before. Yes, it is. This is an orientation induction. Okay, so for students who are already students of Network and haven't have previously been to this, you don't need to attend it unless you wish to have a refresher on any of the information that you may have picked up at a previous orientation but have forgotten or just want to be reconnected with your course. So that is, yes, this is the orientation presentation. It's standard across the board. Now, by way of practice, just to continue to answer that question, we offer attendance at this to all students because some of them do feel that after a period of time, if there's been some circumstances that have had them forced away from study for a little while, some of them prefer to come back to an orientation, and so we're quite happy to offer that, which is why the registration link went out to all of our students. Okay, so moving back on to Networks Accredited Training. We are a registered training organisation. Our RTO ID is 90537, and so if you were ever to look us up on training.gov.au, which is the National Register of Vet Providers and Vet Qualifications, you would be able to search by 90537 and you would find us. Now, we're currently approved to deliver nationally accredited qualifications in two particular qualifications, so we can deliver qualifications in full and the units of competency that make up those qualifications individually for the Certificate 4 in School Age Education and Care and the Diploma of School Age Education and Care. So everybody here will be enrolled in one of those two qualifications. Now, it's important to note that like it says on the screen, as an RTO, we're required to comply with vet quality, with the vet quality framework, and that includes the Standards for Registered Training Organisations 2015. So if you want to get a hold of those standards, the email, not the email address, the URL is on the screen now from ComLaw, but you are also able to Google those and it will bring it up. It's a fairly well-known document. It's a critical document for training organisations because it outlines all of the areas that we must provide service in, and it provides the framework against which we have to prove that we are providing a quality service to students through the regulator, who is ASQA. Now, obviously those are not the only legislative frameworks that we have to work with. We also have to work with the Education and Care Services National Laws and Regulations 2011, the WHS Act 2011, for those people who come in under traineeships, and we do have a handful of them. They're covered by the Apprenticeship and Traineeship Act of 2001. Naturally, of course, we have the Child Protection Acts in Queensland and New South Wales, which is something that which are both very important, and we provide professional development not just to our accredited students, but for to a number of organisations around child protection. We obviously adhere to the Privacy Act of 1988 and its amendments, and we have the gamut of discrimination legislation that we also have to adhere to. So we're actually a highly regulated organisation. We are obliged to behave in a certain way, and part of making sure that our students are well informed is giving them this orientation to make sure that they're capable of doing what they need to do, and they're very well aware of what they need to do so that we can support them through this process of becoming accredited. Okay, now there is some essential reading that you should do before you begin the course. The Learner Handbook is available to you, and also the relevant policies and procedures are located on the website under the training section. So this, certainly the Learner Handbook is available from for download as well from your portal, and if you don't have access to that, please let me know. That's a fairly important document that you should have available to download all the time. So for those of you who haven't received it for one reason or another, it is available for download, and it's made available to you upon enrolment. So as soon as we get your enrolment form and we activate your training portal or your learner portal, you will have access to the learner book, and everybody, even it's publicly available to get our relevant policies and procedures on the website. So any questions about these this essential reading? Anybody need to know anything? When was it last updated? That will have been updated in line with the whole course update mid to late last year. So it's fairly current, and the Learner Handbook itself, so the policies and procedures like that, the Learner Handbook itself has been reviewed this year. So I, in fact, participated in that review. It was undertaken largely by the Quality and Compliance Manager, and I participated as part of that review process. But that is a process owned by him because he is there to determine that quality and compliance take place. So yeah, no worries, it's fairly up to date. Any other questions, or are we good to go on? All right, we'll have a look at RPL and credit transfer. Now, a lot of you will have heard these terms bandied about, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time explaining what they are, because there is a little bit of confusion around RPL as it pertains to this course particularly, and what the differences between RPL and credit transfer are. So every RTO in Australia must offer RPL and credit transfer. This is not optional. We can't just say, sorry, we're not going to do that. We must offer a process of that. Now, how that process looks is entirely up to us, but it must meet the standards for registered training organisations in terms of equity and assessment principles and things like that. So the recognition of prior learning process, it should be as rigorous in every organisation. Now, RPL we'll talk about first. Now we specialise particularly, Network has entry requirements that say you must have had 2 to 3 years of experience working in a registered school age education and care service. And so RPL is a process that we actually do look at quite seriously. Now, RPL is a form of assessment that recognises knowledge and skills that students who enrol with us actually gain prior to their enrolment in the course. So it's through past training, whether it be formal or informal training, and workplace experience. So through that process, prior to commencing any new collection, learners will put together an evidence portfolio, which basically compiles a whole bunch of documents, workplace documents, letters of recommendation, and a number of things that will demonstrate their competence in relation to the units in their qualification. Now, RPL is confessedly a little bit challenging because we must have documented evidence of every aspect and every outcome that is required of the units of competency. Otherwise, we cannot issue an RPL like an RPL unit. So often you'll find that learners will do a certain amount of their units, amount of their evidence collection for their units by RPL, and a certain amount of it will be gap trained going into the future. So they might have a certain number of units that they are okay to RPL and a certain number of units that they can't. It's unusual for a student to be able to RPL an entire qualification, and it's something that we're very, very wary of and we're very rigorous about, because ASQA is very, very careful to make sure that people who are being awarded qualifications under the banner of recognition of prior learning are actually rigorously assessed as holding all of the relevant skills and knowledge. So don't be too disheartened if your RPL will not cover everything. It's actually preferable that way, and then what we can do is look at your current competence and get you to collect evidence from what's happening now, or you can actually schedule with your supervisors activities that you can use to document your competence. So the RPL is definitely not the be-all and end-all of this process of assessment, even though we do specialise in working with people who have been in the industry for a long while. Most of the time the grades that are awarded are competent, not RPL grades. So if you have any further questions around that, by all means contact us and we'll be able to answer any questions. And I'll put it out to questions after I've finished talking about credit transfer. Okay, so credit transfer differs from recognition of prior learning, because recognition of prior learning means that the assessor must make a judgment about whether the prior learning actually meets the requirements of the unit. In credit transfer, the assessor must make a judgment about whether the units previously covered are actually equivalent to the units that are being offered right now in the qualification. So that's really an assessment of process, not an assessment of evidence, and so it differs quite substantially. So this will be pertinent to those of you who have actually undertaken things like our child protection training at an accredited level, or promote and provide healthy food and drinks, or Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety units. Those units are accredited. If you have completed them and received a competent mark for those as a standalone unit, of course we will look to credit transfer those for you. So we will be able to provide credit transfer for the units that you can show us that you've done. Now, this is not just limited to qualifications that you have done with network of community activities. Naturally, if you have done any other qualifications, the most common one I see is people who've done early childhood education and care units that are the same in their ECEC qualification as they are in the school age education and care qualification. Well, then obviously we'll be able to make an assessment for credit transfer for you. So by all means, if you think you're eligible for, credit transfer, let us know as quickly as possible. We do not charge for making an assessment of recognition of prior learning or for making an assessment of credit transfer, and it can shorten the duration of your study. So any questions about that into the chat box? Okie dokie, moving along. Okay, so again, if you have any questions, then you pop them in the chat box. I will definitely answer them at the end of every section. Okay, so the next thing we need to look at is competency-based learning and assessment. Now, competency-based training and assessment is an approach where a trainer or assessor works with a learner and they collect evidence of competence. Now, that evidence of competence needs to be measured against benchmarks set in each of the units of competency that the learner is attempting, and they will be put together, built together to create a national qualification. Now, this is highly rules driven. So there are packaging rules that we have to look at that allow us to actually issue a qualification, and it's on the basis of these packaging rules that we have constructed Network's diploma and certificate for qualifications. So you can be assured that the certificates that you receive do in fact meet the national accredited training standards, and that the packaging rules have been considered and implemented as we've constructed these qualifications. In addition to that, you can be assured that the qualifications and the electives that have been chosen are in response to a substantial amount of industry consultation, where Network, the peak body, went out and asked questions of industry about what they wanted to see in Network, the RTO's qualifications, and so it's on that basis that the units were selected for you. Okay, now competency-based training is a little bit different. Some of you may have studied before at a university level, and that's very much about passing or failing, or submitting assessment tasks and things like that. Competency-based training is a lot more than that. So during the course of competency-based training, learners have a number of different ways that they might be asked to provide evidence. So you could have things like reports from your supervisors. You may have projects you need to undertake. There might be quizzes or exams, and definitely you will be observed in the workplace. So it's not any one assessment and you can't pass one and fail another and be considered competent. It's the sum of all of these assessments coming together and the evidence that's presented across all of these different assessment strategies that an assessor looks at in order to be able to say whether a trainee is competent or not. And it's important because the two grades that we have in competency-based assessment is, they are competent and not yet competent. So the presupposition that underpins competency-based assessment is that although you might not be competent at the right standard now, with enough practice and instruction and mentoring and coaching and all of those sorts of things that are available in competency-based training, you will have the opportunity to become competent. So this is why we have competent and not yet competent. We suggest that everybody with enough skill, training, practice, etc., will be able to achieve a level of competency that is sufficient to be deemed competent at a nationally recognised level. Now, there are two key components of competency-based training. The first one is skill, which is a task or group of tasks performed to a specific level of proficiency, which involves manipulations of tools and equipment or expertise that is knowledge or attitude based. So that's kind of on the screen for you. And the other one is competency, which is a skill, not just any skill, but a skill performed to a specific standard under specific conditions. So those are the two key components of competency-based training. Now I'm seeing a question here. It says, would you get any credit transfer for subjects completed previously in a first-year study in a Bachelor of Education of Primary? Okay, well that's an excellent question, so thank you very much. The answer to it is not simple. It depends on how well the subjects that you have. So for starters, you would not get credit transfer. Credit transfer is not the right terminology for that because you would not be able to compare unit of competency codes with other unit of competency codes and track the equivalency, and that's what credit transfer is. So you would not get credit transfer for that particular scenario. However, if you can show how your subjects in the first year of a Bachelor of Education of primary school education map across to the performance criteria, the performance evidence, and the knowledge evidence of and the foundation skills of a unit of competency, then you're in the realms of recognition of prior learning, or RPL. So it is possible, and if you do have previous studies, those are worth looking at. The other thing that is important to be mindful of, though, is what's called a currency period. And so what that says is that obviously as the world evolves and as professions evolve, different skills and strategies and bits and pieces emerge as best practice and as the established ways of doing things. And sometimes that change is very, very rapid, like it is in, say, information and communication technology. And sometimes that's hasn't really changed much for certain aspects in the last sort of, I don't know, 60 or 70 years. For example, the principles of Rogerian counselling, which is something that I happen to be quite familiar with, being a formerly practicing counsellor, those really haven't changed a great deal since Carl Rogers put them out in the 50s. So, you know, it's not, that really hasn't changed a great deal. So something that I had done in Rogerian counselling, if I had done that many, many years ago and could demonstrate that I had been practicing it all the way up, then definitely I could get you know, recognition of current competency or recognition of prior learning for that. However, if my degree in computer, like in information and communication technology is, you know, 5 to 10 years old, then it would be so out of date that it was irrelevant. So the question is, how long ago was your Bachelor of Education, and how much does it relate to what you're doing now, and how have you upkept those skills over the time? So again, it's not just a simple process. It's a process of looking at the evidence in its totality and saying, okay, well, I can see you learned here these principles. How have you carried them across? This is how I've carried them across. Okay, well then we can say yes, that's a recognition of prior learning situation. So by all means, if you think you're eligible, ask the question. It is very worth asking the question because it can shorten the duration of your course, and you know, there is no benefit to you in covering stuff that you already know and you are already proficient at and have been proficient at for quite some time over and over again. So if you can do that, by all means ask us the question. It's very worthwhile. So any further questions on competency-based learning and assessment or credit transfer recognition of prior learning? Okay, no worries, you're very welcome. I shall move along. Okay, so let's have a look at your courses. We'll start with the Certificate 4 in School Age Education and Care. So for this, learners need to complete 19 units of competency. Now the package requires that learners complete 120 hours of experience working with a range of children aged 5 to 12 years in a regulated school age education and care service. Now this is important. The word regulated is incredibly important. Now, let me give you an example of students who possibly didn't understand the requirements of the qualification. I had a student talking to me years ago when I was a head of faculty in another organisation for a different subject, and they came to me and said, look, yeah, I'm doing my work placement because I'm studying aged care, and I see this gentleman at the library every week, and he's elderly, and I help him and I work through things with him and I give him things to do, and so I'm going to use that as part of my work placement. And I said, no, you're not. Because that was not a regulated situation. There was nobody to supervise that her practice was appropriate. I mean, there's just a million different problems that you can think about with why that would just not work. But I need to make sure that it's really well understood that your school age education and care situation, it's not enough simply to look after and even provide a beautiful program for 5 to 12-year-olds as a nanny or something like that. It must be a regulated care service. So please be mindful that's the case. Now, for most of you, it won't be a problem. It's also worth knowing that at least that we do require that you do at least 120 hours of work. However, the assessment that we have, because we are an assessment-only pathway at this point, it requires substantially, like the logging of substantially more hours than that in order to demonstrate. Now, students who are doing this through a pathway where they were not experienced would probably have to put in, close to 1,000 hours of practical time, self-study, course time, and all of these sorts of things. As an assessment-only pathway, we think that putting in 120 hours per cluster is well and truly reasonable to ask, on the basis that most of you will be working that number of hours without too much of a hassle anyway. If you're concerned about it, by all means, give me, shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'll be able to help explain that. But at any rate, the package requires at least 120 hours. Okay. Now, during this time, the learners, that's you, need to be undertaking the regular duties of an educator in the service, and you have to make sure that what you do as part of your job as an educator actually reflects the specific activities in the performance evidence of the qualification. So it's not enough just to be on the service and keeping an eye on the kids. You actually have to do the make the performances, as it were, that are listed in the performance evidence section of the qualification. Now, the way we handle that for you is to distill those things down into the instructions and tasks you're supposed to complete, that we give to you in your portfolio document. So those are there, and those are in the process of review and update. So anytime that we think that there needs to be more, we do that, but also that forms the basis of the assessment visit that you get, where your assessor is able to look at you and watch your performance and see what you do. So those sorts of things become very important. Now, the assessors have specific things that they do need to see, so and they will discuss them with you as they move along in the progress with you. Now, your completion time for the Certificate 4 is 2 years, and it's a self-directed course. This is important to remember, because as an independent student, and it being a self-directed course, your success is directly correlated with how much time you allocate to you putting together your portfolio and preparing for your assessment visits. So that will determine how much time you put in, will determine when you complete the course. So the expected time is 2 years. That's what we plan for, but it can take quite a bit longer if students are less engaged for various reasons. But we're also fairly flexible around that, on the basis that life happens, and sometimes there are difficulties that draw people away from study for a season. We understand that, and we support students who go through the process, but it's important to remember that in terms of success, it's entirely up to you and how much time you put into it. Now, we will, for those of you who don't already have one, a training plan is going to be developed following your enrolment to plan for the learning and assessment activities for each of you. Now, that training plan, you'll be able to that will be published on your student portal, and you'll be able to download that, sign it, and upload it again, so that we know that you have agreed to said plan. It also gives you an opportunity to tick a box that opts you in for privacy, so that you can actually tick the box and sign your training plan, and that will give us the right to talk to your supervisor if you would like it. If you would not like it, again, there's no obligation to fill that in, and we would simply say, look, I'm sorry, we don't have permission to disclose. All right, let's have a look. So we have, and I will go through this fairly quickly on the basis that you have all this documentation, but you have your cluster 1, which is supporting children. So you'll have supporting children to participate in school-aged education and care, work collaboratively and respectfully with children in school-aged care, support the holistic development of children in school-aged care, and then support behaviour of children and young people. Then cluster 2, you look at play and learning. So you've got develop and implement play and leisure experiences for school-aged care. Use an approved learning framework to guide practice, provide experiences to support children's play and learning. Then looking at cluster 3, this is your diversity unit. So it's Div 001, work with diverse people. Div 002, promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety, develop cultural competence, and implement strategies for the inclusion of all children. Then you look at communication. So you've got working legally and ethically, using communication and organising your professional priorities and development. Then finally you have a health and safety unit. So it's ensure health and safety of children, promote and provide healthy food and drinks, identify and respond to children and young people at risk, participate in work health and safety, provide an emergency first aid response in an education and care setting, and then you're done. So that's all of the 19 units that you need to complete in order to complete your certificate for in-school age education and care. Moving along, we look at the diploma. Now, I do apologise for the typo there. You actually must complete 25 units, and this particular qualification requires you to complete at least 240 hours of work experience. Again, we ask for 120 per cluster because some of the units have specified time requirements of 120 hours at which you must practice the things in that unit. So there are several units that require specific time limits in an education and a school age education and care setting. Okay, again, regulated like I mentioned before, and again you will be expected to participate in the usual duties of an educator in your service. Okay, now again, expected completion time is we have up to 2 years here, but often we find that it's more around 2.5. It can be done a little bit faster depending on the amount of time that you're able to devote to it. Once again, I say that your success is directly linked to how much time you as a learner decide to devote to putting together the documentation that you need to show. So you will also receive a training plan. Now, your units are a little bit different because, for starters, there are 6 more of them. You have support children to participate in school age education and care, work collaboratively and respectfully with children in school age care, foster the holistic development and well-being of the child in school age care, and establish and implement plans for developing cooperative behaviour. That's your first cluster. The second cluster is quite sizable. It's develop play and leisure experiences in school age care, use an approved learning framework to guide practice, provide experiences to support children's play and learning, design and implement the curriculum to foster children's learning and development, nurture creativity in children, and promote children's agency. Cluster 3 is develop cultural competence, promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety, work in partnership with families to provide appropriate education and care for children, implement strategies for the inclusion of all children, work with diverse people. The next one is facilitate compliance in education and care services, develop teams and individuals, analyse information to inform learning, reflect on and improve own professional practice, provide leadership across the organisation and build and sustain an innovative work environment. And then finally, we have what used to be Cluster 2 for those of you who are older students with us, which is promote and provide healthy food and drinks, identify and respond to children and young people at risk, establish and maintain a safe and healthy environment for children, and provide an emergency first aid response in an education and care setting. Now, there are a few things that I want to say about this cluster. First of all of these subjects, except for first aid, are offered as short courses, which you may join on our training calendar at no cost, no additional cost, because they're already paid for as part of your qualification. Now, these enable you to complete an assignment instead of doing the portfolio part for that particular qualification. So if you wish to do that, that's also fine. Now, I'm seeing some questions come through. Will the new cluster layout be posted somewhere? Look, it's really, because the number of, yes, it will be posted somewhere, and when the full implementation is able to be rolled out. It will not make a difference for you to have the old learning book and the new learning book, because the units of competency are the same. So if you have the old learning book, doesn't really make a difference. If you have the new learning book, that's great, but the reality is that you're still completing the same requirements for the same units, so it's not a problem if you have the old one. And to be honest, most people complete this cluster by short. The reason it's been moved to the end is that most people complete it by short courses anyway. The first aid unit is to be completed with an external RTO, and the course cost does not include that. And so we offer that as a credit transfer from somebody else. Now, in the electives, in terms of answering the number of electives, I believe that there are 19 core and 6 electives. I would have to just check that. So those 4 are core units. Actually, let me just, I'll go back. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, so 17 cores, my mistake. So 17 core units and 8 electives. Yes, 8 electives. Okay, and those electives are selected already, and so and they're selected according to industry consultation. Okay, another excellent question. When can you do the cluster 5 units if opting to do the courses? You can fit them in at any time that you like, which is why they've all been moved out to cluster 5. So you don't have to wait to do those. You can do them at any time that you like. And that part of the reason they were put there towards the end is because a lot of people want to do them over the summer period, or they want to do them, you know, as they come up in the face-to-face training calendar, which you're quite welcome to do. So that's why they've all been moved to the end. Now, just a quick word on the first aid course. I'm seeing a question here from someone who's already completed the first aid course. It is more important to send us your first aid course at the end of your qualification than it is to send it at the beginning. The reason we want you to send it at the end is because if you send us one now and then it takes you longer than the currency period of your first aid course, we cannot issue the qualification. You must have your first aid current at the time of graduation in order to graduate. So yes, the answer is yes, you would send your certificate to Network, but do it at the other end, not this end, because the longer it's current, I mean, it's got to have a certain number of months of currency on it in order for us to issue the certificate. So not a problem, you're welcome. All right, so now we don't, there are just a few things. The fees do not include the first aid unit, which is provide an emergency first aid response in an education and care setting. Now, this is a specific first aid unit. If you have a generic first aid unit, you must also have asthma and anaphylaxis to go with it. And so if you just have a standard first aid without that, it's not going to be enough. So I strongly recommend that when you renew your next first aid, make sure that the unit of competency that you are studying is the HLT AID 004, which is the one that is specific to education and care. That will include your asthma and anaphylaxis, which is very important. We cannot issue the qualification without that. So yeah, just word for the wise, make sure you choose the right first aid unit. Okay. Like I mentioned, a current first aid certificate must be held at the time of completing the qualification, not at the time of commencing the qualification. And you've got to do that with an external one, and we will definitely provide credit transfer for this unit upon receipt of a certified copy of your first aid unit statement of attainment. Okay, so let's have a look at learning and assessment all together. That would be comprised of several different training and assessment methods. The training methods that we use now are generally blended delivery. So we offer a combination of self-paced, and then there's the option for face-to-face training. So because this is not all one way of doing things, it is entirely considered a blended delivery approach. Now, I've got a question here that says, do you have to do face-to-face? The answer is no, you do not. And there are only a small number of courses that are offered with a face-to-face pathway. You don't have to do it, but it is important to remember that you will have to complete the portfolio version of your assessment for that, rather than just doing the assessment. And so by that I mean there's an assignment that is designed that you could do if you go to the face-to-face component. But if you do not choose to go to the face-to-face component, then you must complete the portfolio. Okay, so workplace observation is another part. It is a critical part of this particular program, and assessors will generally make a minimum of 2 visits to you in your workplace to observe you working. and to see how you interact with children, how you deal with your co-workers, basically how you perform your duties as an educator or supervisor in the service. Now, this workplace observation is a sort of an instrumental part of our assessment process, and so it's something that must take place on your workplace. In your workplace with the consent of your supervisor, and that's. The workplace observations are negotiated to be negotiated with your assessors to be at a time that is convenient to both of you. Now, supervisors' reports are another way that we collect evidence, and they're gathered from your workplace, whereby we ask your supervisors to make comments on certain aspects of your typical workplace performance. They identify areas where your skills and knowledge don't form part of your job role, and where you might need to have additional support, or where they may need to create a situation whereby you can do something, implement a task in the workplace. They're not expected to assess the candidate. We're simply asking them to provide an affirmation of their observation of the skills. The assessment is done by the workplace assessor that we send in. And it's critical to understand the difference, because many supervisors don't hold qualifications to the level that are being studied by their underlings. Other supervisors, very few supervisors are actually qualified trainers and assessors at the same time, and so we cannot have them assess the students for us. What they simply do is provide a perspective and some further evidence that the student is able to do things. The assessor then takes those reports and makes an assessment of them. So it is not the same. The supervisors, and this is important to be able to tell your supervisor if they do feel a little bit nervous about filling in supervisor reports, that they are not performing an assessment. They're simply helping you collect evidence. So it's not, it's much more, much less anxiety provoking than actually having to complete an assessment. I've just seen a question come through. Is there face-to-face for all clusters or only certain units? At this stage, there is face-to-face for only certain units. So those will be published on the training calendar. But it's most predominantly Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety, child protection, healthy food and drinks, those sorts of units that are there. So they will be, you'll be able to see them on Network's training calendar. And remember that if you see an accredited training module for something that is part of your Cert for a diploma, you can attend that workshop for free and do your assessment, because you have already paid your course fees for it. Now, the other thing that's worth knowing is that you'll have seen in our previous slides that there are a number of units that are common between the two qualifications, that is the Certificate 4 and the diploma. If you are currently studying your Certificate 4 and wish eventually to move on to studying a diploma, all of the units, provided of course that there's no change to the training package, but all of the units as it currently stands that are in both units, you will be able to get, in both qualifications, you will be able to get a credit transfer for. So if you do your child protection as part of your Certificate 4 and then immediately go on to a diploma, you will be able to count that and get credit transfer for that. So now obviously there's the option for e-learning and webinars. Some of our e-learning components are still being developed, but webinars will be added to the training calendar, and you'll be able to nominate the ones that you wish to attend. They're also looking at certain things like study groups or different bits and pieces, and of course you have your assessors to help you through whatever you need. Okay, let's have a look at assessments. Unless there are any questions about the previous slide. Okay, all right, moving on. So submitting assessments. Now, it is ideal for you to submit your assessments digitally through the student portal. And the reason for this is there is very little risk of something going wrong. Those are backed up on previous prior servers. It's generally a very secure way to submit your work. I can tell you, as someone who's been a head of department or an academic manager for quite a number of years now. There's nothing more soul destroying than having to tell a student that their submission has been lost in the post and that they will need to send it again, and then have them say, but I didn't keep a copy. So one of the things that we really encourage people to do is to submit their assessments through the student portal. Remember, you must submit a cover sheet for those clusters. It must be received on by midnight on the due date. Now, that is particularly for assessments that are related to the units that they do face-to-face. They have due dates. In terms of submitting your cluster work and uploading that, that's a little bit more flexible. Now, all components of the task must be submitted together. We need to see them together. So I have a few students uploading cluster evidence piecemeal and saying, I'm going to put a document up here, I'm going to put a document up there. It makes it almost impossible for us to mark you competent if you do it that way, because we have to wait until all of these units come in. So basically, you'll get that this is not yet competent, we don't have enough information. This is not yet competent, we still don't have enough information. This is not yet, so in order to avoid having all of that, it is best to collect your documents digitally first and then upload them in one fell swoop. Also, please use page numbers so we know if things have to be printed for one reason or another, which we try to avoid because of the environmental impact on that. If they do have to be printed, they can be followed. Now, results of assessment will come out as either competent or not yet competent, and you will be informed of the reasons, and you'll be given really clear feedback by the assessor as to why the decision was made, be it competent or not yet competent. Now, should you receive at any time a not yet competent result, you'll be given the opportunity to resubmit the assessment with feedback and instructions from the assessor on what isn't competent yet. Now, if you're permitted up to 2 resubmits. If you remain not yet competent after 2 resubmits, the assessor will give you an explanation of the result and advise you on options for further training. So if you'll need to repeat and repay for the units that you for the clusters that you haven't sorted out. So it's important then, as you do that, to try to make sure that you address the assessor's comments and talk with them if you need to. Your assessors are pretty willing to chat and to let you know what needs to be done. So it's important to be able to use them as a resource to make sure that your assessments and your submissions are really, really good. Okay. Now, at this stage, there isn't a charge for resubmission, so don't be frightened to resubmit. But do make sure that you try to get your resubmissions spot on for what you need to do, because we like to avoid, at this stage, I've never seen anyone have to resubmit more than once, because generally assessors give really good feedback, but naturally we'd like to avoid you incurring any further expense once you've already paid for a diploma. So the best thing to do is to really work with your trainers if you're not certain about what you need to do in order to bring your submissions up to the standard that's required. But like I said, you will receive very clear feedback on how to do that. And one of our quality standards is that you should know at the end of the feedback you receive, you should know exactly what you've got to do in order to bring that assessment or bring your competence into a significant, a sufficient enough standard to be able to receive a competent grade. Okay. Now, one of the key things, any more questions about assessments? Okay, like I said, if questions pop up, I will be more than happy to answer them as necessary. Now, one of the key things that you need to be able to use is the Network Learner Portal. Now, the address for that is noca.jobreadyrto.com.au/user/sign-in. You need to be able to use this portal. It's critical because this allows you to apply for new courses. It allows you to update your contact details. You can look at a timetable for any events that you've registered for. You can download documents and you can upload assignments, or assessment evidence. So it's really important to learn to use this. This is your little repository of proof that you know how to do what you say you know how to do. Okay, so it's very important to make sure you capture all of your documents there as best you can. Now, it also gives you an opportunity to view your results and progress. So as your results are recorded, they will be able to be viewed on your learner portal. And it will also give you a chance to access learning communities. There are various forums and things like that that you can interact on, which will help you to build a sense of cohort with all of your all of the other students in the same course that you're in. So any questions about the network portal? Okay, doing all right. All right. Now, remember, if you're ever having difficulty logging in, Uma is right there to help you, so it's great. Now, for learner support, we are here to help you. We are vitally concerned that you get through the course successfully, because Network is committed to having qualified and competent professionals in the industry. So please ensure that you've advised me if there's any support that you need. And we will try to work around what we can. Now, you're given an assessor after enrolment, and this person is available via telephone and email for the duration of your course. We are able to schedule workplace visits and meetings between you and your assessors, and you'll be able to organise those with your assessors as part of your regular contact with them. We'll also encourage you strongly to develop a position in an online group in the forums where the assessors and the other students get on to have a look at things. There you'll be able to ask questions, see what other people are struggling with, or what insights other people have had on how to do things. That's always very, very beneficial. And you'll be able to discuss the concepts and your implementation of the various things that you do in your own service. You'll be able to talk about those in your online meetings. So it's a great idea to get involved as much as you can with the learning portal and the learning and the forums. But again, if you need help, just let us know. We're here to help. So the last thing I want to cover in just a very brief time is the complaints and grievance procedure. Now, of course, we want there to be a transparent process for ensuring that your complaints and appeals are dealt with appropriately, and that means that we want them to be fair, consistent, and prompt. Now, if you have valid grounds for making a complaint and you've been adversely affected by improper, irregular, or negligent conduct by one of our staff members, failure by one of the staff members or trainers to act fairly, or a decision that's been made without sufficient consideration to facts or evidence or circumstances relevant to you, if you had an adverse experience on the basis that Networks failed to make a decision about something on a timely manner, or a penalty that is too harsh, then you let us know. Now, informally, naturally we would expect you to go to the trainer first to see if there's anything you can discuss. And you should keep a record of what you tried to do. Now, if that approach to dealing with the trainer doesn't work, by all means contact me and we'll talk through the process. And if by chance that we can't come to a resolution, then of course we'll commence a formal approach, which is contacting the compliance manager and working through the situation with him. Now, he will review, his name is Brett, he will review the grievance and attempt to find a resolution, and wherever possible we have a 28-day time frame around finalising matters like this. Now, if for some reason or other Brett is perceived to have a conflict of interest in relation to the situation, then we will escalate the matter further to the Chief Executive Officer. Now, when you're not satisfied on top of all of those processes, you're entitled to make an external complaint to ASQA. So that's also, probably the big guns of the formal approach. Now, I will admit I have never seen a process actually get past me and go to a formal approach, but you should feel comfortable that if you do have a difficulty, or you don't feel that the situation is reflecting your needs and you have a reasonable grievance, then by all means, we have these processes for a reason. So by all means, engage with them and help us to work through them with you. Okay, and that, my friends, is the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, by all means do so. I'm going to cease recording now and just answer questions. So we'll take all of the mutes off the microphone, and if you want to ask anything, that'll be fine.